Galacta, daughter of Galactus, is here to shake up Marvel Snap. With her ability to boost cards every turn, she's a powerhouse for creative strategies. But is she worth your money? Let's break down her potential and how she could redefine the meta. In this video, I'll be talking about Galacta herself. I will be covering cards she is synergistic with. I will be covering potential deck lists for Series 2, 3, and above. And also, what I will be doing, whether I will be purchasing the season pass or not. I did not purchase the Surtur one, so will this one be any different? With Galacta, she of course needs to be played and be face up on the board. Then after that, when you play a card to a different location, that card reveals with +3. If you have a Brood, which is 3/2, Brood actually reveals as a 3/5. Of course, why did I start with Brood when we all know her father, Galactus, would reveal with 9 points of power? So that is how this card works. It's very powerful. For the most part, if you play her on turn 4, you have turns 5 and 6 to get her effect. If you have magic down, of course, you can get her effect on an extra turn. If you pair her with Wasp, you can get it on the exact same turn, as long as you play Galacta first and Wasp into a different lane. And there's also Zabu and Psylocke to cheat her out on turn 3. The cards she's synergistic with, this is not a complete list. Of course, technically, she synergizes with every single card in the game, giving them +3 power. But these were the ones that I felt were a little bit more notable, so I will run through them in no specific order. They are all jumbled here. So I will just start from the top left. We have Adam Warlock, 5/8, who can now draw, most likely is in a much better position to draw you cards, especially if you can get him down early, as you may see in one of my decks. We have Jeff, of course, who becomes a 2/6 mover. Nocturne, a 3/7 mover. Black Panther will reveal as a 5/8, which means he turns into a 5/16 that you can then Zola for 30 points of power. That is going to be a pretty accessible deck, especially as a backup plan to the long Black Panther Zola decks that you see from time to time. Multiple Man becomes a 2/6. Fantastic. Mr. Sinister reveals as a 2/5, so you get two 2/5s. Martyr becomes a 1/8. The higher Martyr's power is, the less likely she is to move to lose you to the game. Why am I even talking about Martyr? Because I like her. But yeah, you still probably won't play her, but it felt worth calling out. Nightcrawler becomes a 1/5 mover. Brood, a 3/5, so you get 3 of them, 3/3/5s. Ebony Maw becomes a 1/10. Now, when would you play that after Galacta? With a War Machine, of course, so there is that. A 1/10 is powerful. You have Namor. He becomes a 4/9 + 5, 4/14. So this is for lower collection level players. Let's bounce to the middle. Orca. Sure, same deal as Namor. A bunch more power. I think he's 16/19, so a 6/19 as long as he's in his own lane. Iron Man is just fantastic, especially if you are running him in an Agent Venom deck off the back of the Mystique, which is why she's on here, because she copies Iron Man, and it's just a lot more power now, especially if they have been Basted or Agent Venomed. And while that does drop your Galacta power, off the back of Iron Man and Mystique, I don't think you really care. You more than make up for that power. We have Sebastian Shaw, which gets +2 off of himself. So you may see some kind of resurgence with hand buff decks. We'll see. Zola is worth calling out, because now when you play down Zola, you leave behind 3 power instead of Zola's 0. So it's not just you necessarily giving up that lane. Your opponent still has to have a card in that lane. So that's worth it sometimes. You have Dakin, who is a 3/7. You destroy the shard. 3/14. It's a lot of power. Beta Ray Bill becomes a 4/9. You not destroy the hammer, but you play the hammer. 4/9 becomes 4/18. That's fantastic. You have Deadpool. I don't know if that quite makes sense, but it's valid. Professor X. If you can get down cards that have gained you priority, have a lot of early power, something like a Sunspot, maybe even a Medusa, a Lizard, playing Professor X, a 5/5 Professor X, that's pretty good. Even though there are movers in the game, that's still pretty good. You have Hood, which becomes a 1/0, negating that negative power. Living Tribunal is here mainly as a call out to that specific deck, especially with Iron Man. It's just even more power that you're getting onto your Living Tribunal cards. So you're just going to increase power overall across all lanes. So that's a net win. Galactus, come on. That's what Galacta is all about. And even though she spreads to these amount of cards. And then
it's anti-venom
in that now that 0 power, 0 cost card becomes a 0 cost 3 power card if you don't have Luke Cage, Valkyrie, or Shadow King, something to reset that power. You still get 3 power on that card that's 0 cost. Now to cover the Series 2 version of a Galacta deck.
What kind of nerd can't spell?
Is that better? This deck is a little spicy, so let's start at the top end instead of going from the low end. You can see Heimdall is there, and with Professor X, what that allows you to do is lock a lane and then slide all of your cards over. Now, Professor X himself will slide, so you may need to play around with this deck just to learn how it functions. But there are a lot of interesting tools, and combined with Galacta, it just gives additional cards more power, especially like a Mr. Sinister if you're playing him late, and you can combine that on turn 5 with a Mr. Fantastic or a Cosmo. You have Jubilee to take out a card out of your deck. If you're using a deck tracker, that's when it comes to shine. You have Nightcrawler, of course, which works good with Galacta. Ant-Man, you in all likelihood will be filling up at least one lane. That's where you would like your Ant-Man to be. Iceman for a little disruption. Of course, we have Shang-Chi. Cosmo, more disruption. And Vision, which allows you to move, especially if you're not necessarily playing a Heimdall, it allows you to move around should you need to. If you get down an early Professor X thanks to a location or something. So this is a deck to try for the newer players. For the less new players, here is a pure Series 3 deck.
Oops, you did it again.
For this version, I went with a Patriot Mystique deck. So you can do the standard line. You do have Sarah in here to potentially get down a last turn, let's say Mr. Sinister and Ultron if you want to, or a Shang-Chi and something else. You have Goose for some lane control that allows you to get power in there with the Ultron bots. You have Mystique and Patriot, of course. You have a bunch of no ability cards in Misty Knight, the Squirrels from Squirrel Girl and Wasp, and Galacta, of course, works with Brood. Getting just extra power on Patriot or Mystique is a bonus. Getting that extra power on Goose, Sarah, like it's all good, and this is a good deck to begin with. So let's give it a little bump of extra power to go over the top of the current meta. No more spelling errors on this one. So if I end up getting Galacta, this will be the deck I will try. Now, that said, I don't have Hawkeye Kate Bishop, so I may be in a little bit of trouble and need to find a replacement. That said, of course, I have to pair her with Galactus. I'm a huge Galactus fan. I climbed with him a couple of seasons ago with a Gwynpool deck, I think it was, and I love the card. So how do we get it out early? With Wiccan, how do we get him down cleanly with Jean Grey? And we have Zabu and Psylocke to discount or be able to play down Galacta and or Wiccan early. We have Nightcrawler and Wasp and Jeff, which when played into the Jean Grey lane gives you options. We have, what I mean by options is you can move them out or you can keep them, play a card somewhere else, and then move them out later to avoid having to play into the Jean Grey lane. We have Quicksilver, of course, to help activate the Wiccan. Hawkeye Kate Bishop is here to, again, further increase the chances of activating the Wiccan. And of course, we have Galactus to go down for 9 power, or maybe even just 6, especially if we've locked them to playing in a certain lane with Jean Grey. What Wasp allows you to do is fill the Jean Grey lane with Wasp while still having enough energy to get down a Galactus. That has come in handy in previous Galactus decks I've had, so I continue to expect it to work just as well. And of course, we have to have Goliath to finish up any early Galactus play that we get down. So will I be getting the Season Pass this season? I did not get Surtur. The reason I didn't get Surtur was because it was just a straightforward, it was a strong card. I would never call Surtur weak. Same thing with Gore. I passed on Gore. He is not a weak card. He is super strong. I personally value interesting cards over strong cards. Now, what I think about Galacta is she's both. She is both interesting and pretty strong, especially depending on the deck that you build with her. Hopefully, one of my decks is actually good, but we will see. I fully expect to make a deck video using Galacta. Of course, that means I will be getting the Season Pass this season, and I look to have a ton of fun with Galacta. Now, the Season Pass costs actual money, so please, this is just a game. I have plenty of decks on my channel that are winners that will continue winning in whatever meta there is. So please do not necessarily feel the pressure. It is very possible to win without getting the Season Pass card. Sometimes it's more difficult than others, but it is still very possible because you don't need to win, you need to gain cubes. Remember that, you just need to gain cubes, not necessarily win. If you can't afford it, no problem. Don't get the card. But if you can, I think it will be a strong card to get, and it will add immense value to your collection. If you are getting Galacta, let me know what your ideas are for using the card. Thanks for reaching this deep into the video, and thank you to all the members of the channel. Everybody has contributed to helping this channel grow to new heights, and I am super appreciative of it. Until next time, let's break down her potential and how she... Almost. You're really helping the channel grow and reach new heights, and I'm appreciative